Today I'm going to talk about our mission statement. I'm going to start the series of sermons on the mission statement. It's short, so it won't be a long series, but I'm talking about community today. And I don't know what community is. I read a couple of books about it this week, and they're all really different. But the one that was the most interesting was Seth Godin's book, Tribes. And he talked about a community, again, as a voluntary association of people with a leader and an idea and a way to communicate. And he talked about Grateful Dead and how they changed the whole music business just by, they only ever had one top 40 album, but they had rabid fans and fans who worshiped that music and that experience of being with the Dead and hearing them. And so they had a leader, it was Jerry, and they had an idea, which was being a Deadhead is who I am, and I love this experience. And I was there, but I don't remember how we communicated back then. They didn't have email, so I'm not sure how they did it. But now we have email, and so we can communicate. And I think many people are in many different tribes. And this Unitarian Universalist tribe in Austin has at least one leader, has many leaders in the congregation, and Chris, who is a marvelous leader, and Lane and Brent. And so we have this idea that tells us where we're going and what we're about to do. And I want to tell you about my sense of belonging when I found the Unitarian Universalist congregation in Spartanburg, South Carolina. I was a Presbyterian minister and had been one for 15 years. I was the college chaplain at the local college, and because they didn't know what a bad Presbyterian I was, they asked me to come speak, and they said, "We don't want any of that Presbyterian stuff, so will you come and will you read the website, and will you find out about Unitarian Universalism and come preach," something like that. Well, I was getting ready to preach, and somebody was droning on and on about something. It had a lot of acronyms in it. I didn't understand what they were saying. And I was reading the back of the hymnal, and I just thought, oh my goodness, they've got Denise Levertov in here. They have Adrienne Rich. They have T.S. Eliot and Rabindranath Tagore. And I love these poets, and I feel at home here. And then they had this thing called Joys and Sorrows, which was an open mic time where people could come. And I was comfortable with that. It was like a Baptist prayer meeting with prayer requests. You know, and people would come and say, well, you know, I think my sister's having an affair. Which is the best thing about prayer requests. But these were a little bit different. This lady stood up and she said, "I have a joy. I saw a pileated woodpecker in my backyard this morning." And I just thought, these people are different. And I kept sneaking to come back. I was married to another Presbyterian minister, so I was the minister's wife at his church. But I was gone every now and then, and so I tried once a month to go to the Unitarian Universalist Church. And then as my marriage was ending, I switched my ordination to the Unitarian Universalist denomination so I could be part of this denomination. I should have belonged in the Presbyterian Church. I have a last name that's famous in the Presbyterian Church. If anybody had belonged there, it should have been me, but I did not feel a sense of belonging there. I felt like I was loved in a kind of an impersonal way, in spite of who I was. And that's how God loves you in the Presbyterian Church. Kind of, God loves you in spite of your faults. It's because he's good like that. And I didn't want to be loved in spite of who I was. I wanted just to be part of something. I wanted to belong. And I felt a sense of belonging. I felt I have found my tribe. I've found my people. I don't know how many of you grew up in the Unitarian Universalist Church, or how many of you have had that sense of finding your people here or in another UU church, but it is wonderful. And so I became the minister of that church eventually. It was a small congregation, but it grew. And it became the kind of lively community that was a crucible for what I call the creative. That's one of my words for God, the creative. I get that from the I Ching. So it was a crucible for the creative. It became a church where if somebody had an idea, people would talk to them about it, flesh it out, gather some more people who might be interested, and then help and support that person do what they really wanted to make happen with the church. And it was a weird group because it was the only liberal game in town. And so 30% of the congregation was LGBTQ, and a big proportion of the congregation was blue-collar shift work in factories. Some of the congregation was on disability, so had very little money. It had lots of different classes of people. We're supposed to pretend there aren't classes in America, but there are, and you know there are. So there were lots of different kinds of people. There were Trinitarian Christians there who were there because they were gay and there was no other church that would be their home. It was hard to find people of color who would come and feel or be safe in that congregation. We say we want diversity, and those among us who are people of color come to a Unitarian congregation, and sometimes it's difficult to stay because people say stupid things. I understand how that can happen easily. One of my dearest friends a couple days ago said something really stupid to me about being gay. And I know she loves me. I know she didn't mean it, but she said, well, I don't think you look gay, but maybe it's just because I already loved you before I knew you were gay. And anyway, I'm just like, I don't know how to parse what was wrong with that. Just felt that. And so we say things like that to one another. And yet in this congregation, I can think of 3 or 4 people of color who came and were generous and tolerant, even though their second visit, Tim and Taritha came together. Everybody assumed that they were married, but Tim is gay. And he is an AIDS educator, as is Taritha. That's how they know each other. They came, and the next week, the president of the congregation went up to them and said, would you be on our multicultural task force? And I was just like, y'all, I'm so sorry. Just come over here and sit down. You don't have to be on the multicultural task force. And then the choir started singing spirituals. And Tim, who is still important in my life, Brother Tim said, those spirituals, my dad was the bishop of our church growing up, and he said, my dad was gay too. He loved those purple robes. He said, he called that music trash. And he said, I wouldn't have any of that trashy music in my church. So, had a little quiet word with the choir director. Anyway, and Tim had a twisted sense of humor too. He came up to me the very first day. This is a trial by fire for a Southern UU minister. He comes up to me, puts his hand on my shoulder, and he goes, where do the colored folks sit in this? I was just, and then he just was like, I'm just kidding you. Anyway, he had this idea, he and Taritha. They were paying barbers in neighborhood barber shops to do AIDS education. And so in every barbershop that they sponsored, they had a huge bowl of condoms. And if you haven't heard that word in church yet, I'm sorry, but not sorry. They had a huge bowl of condoms, and the barbers were paid $200 a month to do AIDS education with people that they were doing haircuts for. And that was working. So this congregation heard that idea and decided they loved it and started raising money to sponsor barbershops. I thought that was great. So the crucible for creativity was alive. They started having a coming out weekend party at this congregation. Coming out weekend is October 10th or whatever weekend is around there. And they would have a dance. And in this small southern town, people would come in looking over their shoulder and skulking in the door. And we would dance, and it was open to everybody. And so this one straight couple who were good dancers gave lessons. There's a South Carolina dance called the shag, and they would give shag lessons to anybody who wanted to learn at the party. And two straight women decided they wanted Spartanburg, South Carolina, to have a pride parade. And the church went, that's a great idea, we'll help you. We partnered up with the LGBT student union at the university in Spartanburg, and they went to the mayor and said to the mayor, Bill, we're going to have a pride parade. And he said, ladies, I wish you wouldn't. And they said, Bill, we're going to. So you can either protect us or not. And so the police were out in force, and 1,500 people showed up for the pride parade. And the protesters were there. There were about 30 protesters. It was okay. The next year, 4,000 people showed up. And it was hot. It was 90 degrees and 90% humidity. I don't know if you've ever been to South Carolina, but oh, the humidity. So the drag queens were melting. But they persevered. Now they have an earth fair where they have things like our Green Sanctuary does. Anyway, it was an alive congregation like this one is. This is a great congregation which is alive and which is a crucible for creativity, for the creative. And if you have an idea, my hope is that you will feel yes for your idea in this congregation. We want to support one another. We want to make one another feel or help one another feel belonging. So I found that church, and it was like, you can sing with me if you want to. What wondrous love is this, oh my soul, oh my soul. What wondrous love is this, oh my soul. What wondrous love is this that brings my heart such bliss and takes away the pain of my soul, that takes away the pain of my soul. Yeah. And in this congregation, it's big, and so it's maybe a little harder to make your way from the outer circles step by step into the inner circle where you feel it's in you, that feeling that I'm in the inner circle now, where you feel not only a sense of belonging, but a sense of ownership. Like, this is my place, and if there's something wrong with it, I'm going to help make it better. And I'm going to look out for what can be changed, and I'm going to be vocal about what I like about it. And I'm going to turn to a person I don't know and invite them to feel welcome here. Because in a church situation, you have a chance to get to know people you never would meet in the other 6 days of your life, and you have a chance to care for people who are from very different backgrounds from yours, different socioeconomic backgrounds, or different ethnic backgrounds, or different educational backgrounds, different ways of thinking, points of view, different experiences of being in America. Those among us who are people of color have a very different experience of being in America than those among us who identify as white in America, who present as white. And it is a wonderful opportunity for us to be able to speak our truth and be listened to. And this does not always happen, but this is our aspiration. That this is a place where we feel safe enough to speak the truth of our lives and to have our soul listened into being. That is what this place is. It's a crucible for caring. It's a way to, in organized ways and in disorganized ways, care for one another, people that aren't in our immediate family. We already care for them, whether they be difficult or easy. But it is a good practice to be able to care for people who are different from ourselves. And there are ways of feeling more cared for, feeling more belonging here. One of the ways is to get to know the minister. I have moved to what I call far north Austin, but other people call it Pflugerville. And so I'm in town for longer stretches of time, free for lunches and dinners quite often, and so I would love to have lunches or dinners. Just email me. And another way is to be a member of a small group in the congregation. We have formal small groups called Chalice Circles, and we have the choir, and we have the people of color group, and we have the white allies group, and we have the alphabet soup group, which is LGBTQI, AA, all those. That's why they call it alphabet soup, because it changes as we become more evolved. And and there are all the social action teams doing projects all the time. And we now have someone here in Sanctuary because you all are courageous. And he is a lovely person, at least he seems to be. I've met him 3 times. He seems great. And you all are saving his life, basically, not to put too fine a point on it. So this is a congregation that is a crucible for caring in all different ways. And I felt you caring for me when I was in the deepest part of my long, slow disaster. Some of you all sent cards, and some called, and some kept a distance. I assume that you were letting me have my sabbatical. And so no matter how you responded, I feel your support and affection. When I was sinking down, sinking down, sinking down. When I was sinking down, sinking down. When I was sinking down beneath my sorrow's ground, friends to me gathered round, oh my soul, oh my soul. Friends to me gathered around, oh my soul. At the end of a sabbatical, which this is, you start a new ministry. That's what we're told, that's what we're taught. I think it's very auspicious that we're starting a new ministry and re-examining our mission at the same time. It's very auspicious that at some time in this fall, permitting of the city of Austin allowing us, we will begin construction as we try to make our space more welcoming. Right now it's November, so we're holding our hope, and our fingers are crossed. So there are so many unexciting things that have to happen when you're doing a renovation. You know, if you want to know about them, I'm happy to talk to you about them, but I don't want to bore everybody with like water pipes and water pressure and sprinkle heads, and it's just endless. But fortunately, I don't do most of it, Chris does. And Brian Moore and the building team. But I just feel that it must be endless from just watching you all do it. So it's auspicious, the beginning of a new ministry here. You don't have a new minister, but we are making a new mission statement. And even if we keep it exactly the same, it will be spiffed up and understood and discussed and talked about. And there will be ownership from people who weren't here 6 years ago. One of the things that I love about this congregation is that when it starts something new, we ask ourselves, who do we want to become as individuals and as a community? Who do we want to be? What do we want to do? What do we want to accomplish? What are we already accomplishing that you may not know about? It can be a crucible for curiosity. And I'm sorry about the alliteration with everything starting with C. It just happened last night about 8 o'clock. I was like, oh, I know how to remember this sermon in my head. Because curiosity is a holy thing, my friends. Curiosity is an engine. And if we ask ourselves, who shall we become? How shall we do it? How shall we relate to each other while we do that? What shall be our guiding idea? We have it already. We just want to express it. How shall we express our guiding idea? We can do anything with a group like this. We can do anything in this world. And it's not only this group that's in this room. Our tribe is nationwide, even global, because of the internet. We're on the internet, and so people write me from all over the world saying, I've been watching your church, I've been watching your sermons, I feel like a part of your congregation. There are churches all over the country starting to think about becoming sanctuary churches. Who do they call? They call us, because you had the courage to step out, because we were curious. What's going to happen if we do this? We don't know. And it's okay to be curious when it's okay to make a mistake, because if it didn't work out, we would just go, okay, that didn't work out. We'll do something different. So, my friends, I wish you community. I wish you community here, and I'm very glad to see your faces again. To love and to all friends I will sing, I will sing. To love and to all